name is Brett Garrett, and I am Open Table's District Director for New York City. And it is my distinct pleasure to introduce this next panel, Prison Reform and the Restaurant Industry. The restaurant industry can play a vital role in breaking the cycle of repeat offending, offering employment and community to those looking to re-enter society and rebuild their lives. However, formerly incarcerated individuals often lack the requisite job training for restaurant industry roles, and the stigma associated with ex-offenders makes getting jobs difficult. We're lucky to have these remarkable business leaders and chefs up on stage who are using their platforms to help what is often our most forgotten segment of society become a part of society again. It's my pleasure to introduce our panelists. Keith Corbin, chef and owner of Alta Adams. John Gargano, general manager of Kraft New York City. Dan Giusti, chef and owner of Brigade. And Kurt Evans, founder of the End Mass Incarceration Dining Series. Moderated by Pulitzer Prize and James Beard award-winning author Kim Severson. Thank you.
There are 2 million people plus incarcerated in the United States. Black people are in prison at a rate of 5 times more than white people. And so this is like, you think that this is, I think 2 million is bigger than the size of Philadelphia. It's more like maybe the size of Chicago or something. All right. That's because everybody in California thinks they're the best and they have the most stuff. But that's, it's a lot of people, right? And a lot of people who eat food every day. And I think everybody in this room cares a lot about the transformative nature of food and feeding people and what food can do for community. So we're here to talk on 2 tracks. One is just to understand how nutrition in prison can change and get better and what it might mean on that level, and really get a sense of how 2 million people eat every day. And then on the other track is to talk about what we'll just call the prison to restaurant pipeline, which has sort of always been there. But I think there's some ways in which training and changes inside can really help the restaurant industry outside, and talk a little bit about how that works or doesn't work. So first of all, let's just talk a little bit about the reality of eating in prison. And I know some of y'all don't have the experience and some of you do. So Keith, you were just talking about a stinger. Tell us what a stinger is.
So for me, my stinger was, as he put it, rip the cord off the back of my TV and take some type of metal prongs and attach it to each cord, each wire exactly, and put a tree branch in between, wrap it in plastic, and then that's how I would boil my water or heat it up. Drop the stinger inside the water, boil it in order to cook my noodle. Or a jug or a cup or whatever that would hold water. Other than that, I would have to just use my sink cold water to put in my noodles and let it just blow up. Right. So if I wanted something hot, I had to get creative.
Right. I think people understand what the daily, what you would be getting on the line, right? So I think I saw a statistic that says something like 60% of inmates don't ever get fresh fruit, or very rarely, and a little bit less than that to get fresh vegetables. So what you're getting for prison food, which is sometimes less than $1 a day, right, that people are spending to feed folks, you'll have to supplement with what you can get either from commissary or make, right, in your room. So what's the diet like? I mean, what do most people eat?
I know for me, prison food, because I worked in the kitchen in prison.
And Keith, how long were you in prison?
I was in prison for 10 years.
Okay. In
California.
California.
Yeah. And so the food in California prison is 60% water for dinner. Like they make soups and it's just, they cook it in a lot of water. And then when they send it over to each yard, we just add more water to put in the oven and heat it up to stretch it out. So it was really no substance there at all whatsoever. But the food in your cell, like it's just processed meats. Same thing you get at gas stations. Chips, Jimmy John, the Slim Jims, pork cracklings, some noodles, dried beans. You know what I mean? Like if you really want to ball out, then you'll get the processed roast beef packages and things like that. But it's just all processed food or watered down food.
John, tell us a little bit about your. So how long were
So,
you in for?
I was sentenced to 30 years, but I did 13 in federal prison. And everybody thinks federal prison is way better than state, but it's really not. A lot of the food came in that was marked not for human consumption. I remember the fish they used to fry every Friday came in a box that said not for human consumption. What that means or why that's on there doesn't make me want to eat it. I would go to the chow hall maybe once a week. Pasta in the microwave is what I ate for a good part of the time I was there.
Really? So you would only go eat on the line once a week or so?
Once in a while.
What was your choice?
Burger Day till they started having bones in them.
Okay.
Hot dogs, how bad could they mess them up? At one point, we were getting chicken every day for like 3 months straight, and they were like this big. So I don't even know how many steroids or hormones were in them, but definitely not good. Yeah.
And John, you were in the restaurant business before you went in. You were a waiter with Union Square Hospitality, right? So your
Correct.
sense of what food could be was already pretty high. How do you adjust to that when you go in and?
The human mind and human body has a strange way of just figuring it out. Just figuring it out. Buy stuff from the guys working in the kitchen. You could buy the food from the chow hall that the officers ate in because that was much better. You could get chicken breast from the officer chow hall, but you only got a leg from the inmate chow hall.
Without a bone.
Without a bone. Yeah. Well, I was in a low, so we got bones.
Yeah, we didn't get bone.
Yeah.
And Keith, how did it turn out for you? You came from kind of big production family cooking kind of. In your family, you grew up with a lot of cooking. How was it for you to adjust to your diet once you were inside?
By the time I went to prison, my granny had passed, and that culture had moved on. I was in the streets in the street culture, so I was kind of, eating shitty as it is anyway. Fast food and corner store. It's not really too many options in my community, so prison diet and street diet and Watts like parallel to me. Yeah.
So I think one thing that people talk about is that the people who are cooking the food in prison are not necessarily getting training in food service. We have this idea that, well, you could have the job in the prison kitchen, then you'd learn how to cook and you could come out and but that's not really how it works. And I know, you were just saying that that's the jobs in kitchens in prisons are more about the politics in the prison than learning to cook or getting any training, right?
I think for me, what helped when I came home was the fact that I was dealing with such low-level quality food and ingredients that I had to trigger a creative mind, right, to create something that was palatable for me to digest. And like that creativity is what I still use today. That mind frame is what I still use today. I just get very creative with the dishes.
I think that's the success of Alta is just that, people think that your food is, everybody, big fans of Alta. So that just originally comes from the creativity you were forced to have in prison. Is that right?
Yeah. A accumulation of things, just the way I source. I have, before I went to prison, I have a drug background. And so sourcing was always important.
Skill sets, man. It's all about skill sets.
So sourcing, the way I source my product was always important because it translated, right? And I was always a believer in product sales. You don't need a spokesman to sell great products. So I use those tools for my life in Alta, right? How I source. I'm at the farmer's market 4 times a week. I'm constantly deframing dishes and reframing them to fit our California way of cooking. So, yeah.
Let's talk a little about how you're changing. Dan, you go into institutions and try to improve. That's, your background is from Noma. That's a little bit different ballgame than trying to go into a prison and make the food better. So talk a little bit about what you're doing and kind of your lay of the land in improving food for people who are incarcerated.
Yeah, so first of all, I feel like I'm very much a novice in this topic. We started the company to feed folks in institutions, and we started, and most of our work has primarily been in public school systems. But the whole idea of the company was that everybody deserves a good meal, and everybody deserves a meal that someone thoughtfully prepared. We're lucky now to have the opportunity to be partnered with a nonprofit group called Impact Justice, as well as the Maine Department of Corrections. So we placed a chef in the Maine DOC like 3 months ago. So we're like just underway there. And honestly, for me, when I first started visiting the facilities, and this was like early last year, there was a few things that were striking. One of which was, based on what I read about prison food, Impact Justice produced a very comprehensive report. I imagine there's not many of them on food in prisons that explains how bad food is and these ideas that there's food being served that's not fit for human consumption. And in Maine, they are very forward thinking. That's probably why we have the opportunity to be working with them. That the food there, honestly, isn't that bad, to be completely honest. Everything's made from scratch. I hate to say it like this, but there is a lot of the food I ate there is better than a lot of the food that I see in schools.
In the prison?
In the prison.
Where you at?
The state of
transfer?
but again, I'm speaking
Maine.
based
Up
on
in Maine,
my very limited experience in Maine, and they're very forward thinking, and so when I saw that, the first thing I thought was, okay, we originally had gone in as like this partnership to say let's make the food better, but when I got there and realizing that the food there seemingly is way better than the food in prisons across the country, it didn't seem like that made sense in terms of the focus. So for me, the focus now is kind of taking what they're doing there and seeing is that can we kind of put it all together and make it a replicable model for other state prison systems, because clearly it's not the same. And then the other is the training piece. That was the other thing that struck me when we were there, was that in the Maine state prison, the maximum security prison, they had 35 incarcerated people working in the kitchen, feeding the rest of the incarcerated folks there. And then they had a culinary program with 2 or 3 residents in it. And I just didn't understand, why is there a culinary program for 3 people, but we're not kind of quantifying the training that these folks are getting over however long they're in there. So for me, it's like, there's obviously a lot of amazing work happening to train folks that are, coming out of prisons. They're in prison for some time. And in my experience as a chef, there's a lot of folks that could come out of those prisons, not just because from what I've seen, a lot of folks who are in prison, when they come out, they're getting jobs. A lot of it has to do with like charity. It's like, oh, we're an organization that's going to give someone who was previously incarcerated a job. It doesn't need to be that way. These are folks that are coming out with a skill set. They know how to work. They know how to do good work, and they should be able to just get jobs. I mean, we're obviously have a shortage of folks in this work. So that's, for me, what I'm very passionate is about. How can we train folks that are in prison at the time?
Kurt, you do incarceration dinners, right? You do dinners designed to have people talk about mass incarceration. And how important is this link between what you're feeding people and what you're seeing, and dealing with the diets of incarcerated people? I know that you take on an activist role in a lot of ways. So talk about how you mix your chef world with your...
I work in a lot of intersections of mass incarceration. I was culinary instructor for teaching formerly incarcerated youth ages 18 to 25 culinary skills. Also, I was the culinary director at the Doe Fund. And that's also a demographic of gentlemen that have been formerly incarcerated for 30, 40 years. And a lot of them were homeless. So the link between homelessness, mass incarceration there. And then also, when we talk about like reform in the prison industry, when we talk about the jobs, pretty much the jobs have always been there, but they're predatory jobs where, like, you come home from prison, you're cheap labor. And you guys can get guys in the kitchen, and then they talk to you a certain way, because some guys come home and they're on parole and they're not trying to go back to jail. So sometimes they'll put up with abuse at a place that's not really in their best interest. So when me and Keith was talking, like one of the things that inspired me when I got into doing work around mass incarceration was local. And that's a program by a chef, his name Roy, and he started this program. But then it was also, before Roy, back in the 80s, this guy out in LA started this program called Homeboy Industries, and it was like gang intervention. And he has like a huge bakery, and the impact that he has on like people's lives. The pre-entry part is something that I've been doing with a policy format, because you can't change nothing without policy. And to speak about the Maine situation, Maine may have like some of the, you don't want to call them best prisons, but they have prisons, like it's prisons all over the country that have gardens, and the inmates can't eat the food. But Maine, like they can garden and actually go back and cook that food. So Maine prison system is something like in Copenhagen, like how like in another country, like how their systems is. So the work that's being done in Maine is like really important. But the work that I do is just like at an intersection of all of these ventures, because one out of every three black men have been formerly incarcerated. I have not been formerly incarcerated, but the work that I do, I'm Justice Impact. I have 5 uncles, father, all have been to prison. So that's where all my work it lies. So when I started the Mass Incarceration Dinner Series, it was to bring people together over dinner to talk about mass incarceration in a way that we can hopefully affect policy change. Because at the end of the day, a lot of states, it's not a box. And the box never really even mattered for the industry because, like I said, it was predatory. So if you're coming out, you're down on your last, you'll take especially pre-pandemic times. Just seen a panel, somebody said before pre-pandemic, before people realized they had humanity, because now you can walk into the kitchen and actually get paid money. You can actually get paid because of the time now. But before you walk in the kitchen, somebody would really literally pay you $7 an hour and like work you. So yeah, that's where my work lies.
Our prison people who are formerly incarcerated, are they good employees in y'all's experience, or what? I mean, when you came out, John, you were ready for a job and nobody would really hire you, right?
So when I was released with the prior hospitality experience, I said, all right, I got this. Called my mom. I said, dig up that recommendation from Chef Perrier, and I'm going to go get me a job. So I started applying one by one. You talk about the box, right? Well, when your resume has a 15-year gap, you can check the box or not. Don't really matter, right? Unless you're going to lie. So I started playing with some restaurant groups, and I would check the box, not check the box, check it and hope I could explain it, not check it and hoping they don't find out. But it all ended the same way, right? Seasoned HR professionals and managers just explaining to me that they're going to go in a different direction. So there was a big reluctancy among the industry to give people like me an opportunity. Maybe because that I was front of the house. We all know the divide between the two, and you are correct. We are now properly paying them. I don't think we're there yet, but we're trying to figure it out. But the back of the house is definitely making more. But for me, my whole success started when I entered River Park and applied for a job. And when I walked in there, the culture was that didn't matter. Obama gave you clemency. It's good enough for him. It's good enough for us. I'm not going to give you a manager job. I'm going to give you a $10 an hour beer garden cashier job, and you show me what you got. Right? And if we gave that to every person that came home from prison, that recidivism rate of 77% in 3 years would change drastically. We have all the answers to the problem. Mass incarceration is real. I spent 13 years hearing stories like yours, and you take a young kid from a disadvantaged community and you give him 10, 20 years, what do you think he's going to be when he comes out? He's going to be angry. He's going to be pissed off. He just listened to all these old heads tell him what to do not to get caught next time, right? But if we took the prison food system and made that a program and made the federal government fund it the same way they do Pell Grants, now we'll have applicants come out with 6 years experience, right? 10,000 people a week come home. Society wants to forget about them, but they come home, 10,000 a week. They're your Uber driver. They're your pizza delivery guy, right? Give them an opportunity, right? Don't judge everybody by their worst day. Some people can come home and be successful, but if we keep blocking opportunities, we're not going to fix the problem.
I think, yeah.
Right, absolutely.
All I hire is formerly incarcerated. When Alta made top 17 restaurant in the country by Thrillist and Esquire, all my front management team and back house management team were formerly incarcerated. My manager, like if you watch the news spectrum, had an ankle monitor on. So that's how I hire. I don't hire from Cologne Blue or any of these places where people can actually go get a job. I do hire from like culinary schools like Trade Tech or Maxine Waters, those small ones where people are coming from hard times and making a choice to do something different. and go to these community colleges, I meet them and I bring them in to help me train the formerly incarcerated that I bring in. It's difficult. It's a high turnover rate because you can have someone that can learn the skill. The thing is changing the mindset in the way they think. The thing is not the skills in the kitchen, but being reliable and dependable, right? Being able to choose your shift over the party. When I first came home from prison, I was the worst formerly incarcerated hire that they could have ever made. But they gave me opportunity. Daniel Patterson and Roy Choi gave me opportunity, and they committed to that. But not only through this opportunity, they gave me support. And that support led me to be here today, right? I tried to quit numerous of times. They talked me down off the ledge, right? I was still battling drug addiction while trying to go to work. They worked through it with me, right? Even when I had no leverage to say partner with me on the restaurant, I had a great idea and the opportunity presented itself and they took a chance. And now I have Alta, right? And those formerly incarcerated managers, I'm opening another restaurant and now they will own the restaurant with me, right? So it's like I gave them an opportunity, train them up in management, and now providing ownership. So I reached back out to myself, people that were just like me, that wouldn't get a chance. So you're right. If you give formerly incarcerated folks a chance, it may be a difficult challenge, but if you know what you're hiring and you support them and just give them time, everyone may not transition, but you will have some people that flourish. I did.
And the ones that do will make all of it
Yeah.
worthwhile.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Um,
And they are good employees. Like
Yes.
Most majority of people that I've ever worked with that was formerly incarcerated, really great employees. And also when we talk about I don't want to paint with such broad strokes, but there's a lot of nuance in when you talk about the restaurant industry and being predatory. So most people probably wouldn't think they could, like, formerly incarcerated, think they could walk to a fine dining restaurant and get a job. So that's because they were already too busy exploiting another type of labor. So if you're chefs, you already know about the labor that they're exploiting from the Le Cordon Blues and the people that want to stage and work for free. So they wouldn't really even have to take a chance that much like that. But the smaller businesses, the quick order cooks, they're the ones that's the part of the industry that really exploited the prison labor. And those guys are like really great cooks. They come to work, they put up with everything, and they don't rip your head off after, like, you done yelled at them, did all of these things. So I think that the industry has been changing into, like I said, like and that started in like 2013, 14, I believe. Yeah, local. 2016. So yeah, so like, and these are like two like world-renowned chefs. They went and started this program and like really are pumping out a lot of success stories.
Yeah. But is it, I mean, realistically, and local for many various reasons didn't work out, although it did produce you out of this and Alta.
I'm glad you corrected that.
All right. I'm saying you're the exception to the rule.
It worked out. It depends on how you look at it.
I know, that's true.
Monetarily,
No, it did. And it did.
didn't,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. But
the
it did.
purpose, it did.
And I think it changed the narrative a little. It said, okay, here's a way that chefs and people can look at this population or how to do this. But is like these bunch of restaurateurs out here. Do you need to have someone on your staff who's been either previously incarcerated or knows about it and able to, so that people can make that transition? I mean, if I'm just walking into a restaurant and nobody knows what the reality of my life was, how am I going to be successful at that place?
So I don't think you don't need a formerly incarcerated person on your
To be your
executive
mentor
team,
of
to be
whatever.
your mentor.
Your,
Well,
your
you know,
spokesperson. That's
I beg to differ.
Well, I'll go back to what
But go
Eric.
ahead.
I'll go back to what Eric said yesterday. Right?
ahead.
Invest in your team. Right? Take the time to understand their needs and their challenges. You can't lead people if you don't understand what rewards they're seeking while they're with you. Right? For a formerly incarcerated person, they're seeking stability, mentorship, and opportunity to not do what's going to put them back in prison. Had I not walked into Crafted Hospitality, I would be back in prison, right? Because I would have resorted to whatever I needed to do to survive, right? Without that opportunity, and there's hundreds of thousands just like me, right? I think you just need to listen to your staff. Everybody I've heard for the last day and a half here is, how do you improve culture? How do you make a place a home, right? How we have people at Kraft that have been with the restaurant for 23 years, right? That's remarkable, right? That doesn't happen because you're not listening or you're not caring, or, we have a top down, approach that this is how we want our employees treated. This is how we want to deal with those who have problems, right? This is what we do. We're not going to be quick to fire somebody, right? How do we work with you? You have a drinking problem, how do we help you, right? I just go back to, after graduating from Hostos, I was appointed to the Hostos Community College Justice Initiative Program. And I met a kid there, I started mentoring him, young kid, 27 years old, grew up in the Bronx, anger management, 17 foster homes growing up. Now, I couldn't imagine living in one. Living 17, he fought for food, clothing, attention, a place to sleep, a life. Told me he wanted a job. I said, well, you can't come to the restaurant and start fighting people. We got him a job at Temple Court, one of our sister restaurants downtown. 3 months in, he gets into an altercation with some kid from Westchester or whatever, and they fight. Calls me up, he's upset. I told you, fighting is antisocial. It's not accepted in the workplace. What do you want me to do? We hooked him up with a program at Mount Sinai Hospital. He got some anger management classes. 3 months later, he comes back, he wants a job again. We can't hire you again. Are you crazy? I talked about it with our HR director and with Tom, and they said, if you want to do it, we'll support you, and you manage it. The kid's been with us a year. He's a runner now, making 80 plus, just got married, had a baby, moved into a house. How many lives did we change? His, the baby's, the wife, everybody he knows. He now becomes the example for everyone in his communities of what can be if you just make good decisions, right? We have to do it one at a time. It's easy to throw your hands up, but we have to treat our guests and our staff equally. You have to treat the staff the same way you treat their guests. They're all important.
Keith, what do you think of all that?
So for me, you have restaurants that may take a chance on one person. Over 50% of my staff is formerly incarcerated. And when you have an environment like that, you have to have people that know the team, right? You have to have people that they can look towards, that come from where they come from, to be inspired, right? It's like, if you have that many formerly incarcerated or people that wouldn't get a job nowhere else, it's like having a restaurant without a chef. When you don't have someone that they can relate to, someone that they can teach them, someone that can train them, someone that they can inspire to be, right? I'm in my restaurant all day, every day. I'm formerly incarcerated. I'm an ex-drug addict, gangbanger, drug dealer. So with all these folks in the restaurant working, each one can pick a part of me and be inspired, right? I'm there with them. I'm teaching them. I'm training them. They can see. Because when I got the job at Loco, one of the things that made me want to quit quite a few times is that I didn't have no one that I can look to. I had Roy and Daniel. In my opinion, a rich Asian and a rich white man, right? There was no one that came from where I came from with my life experiences that I can look towards at the end of the tunnel and say, wow, he came from where I came from. I can be that, right? This can be a path for me. So I need people that come from that situation to be an inspiration to the people that we're hiring. So I believe that you need formerly incarcerated people.
So all the restaurants who have these DEI programs,
Yeah.
they should start to think about an incarcerated person as part of their
Management
staff
team.
management team. So
Because
there you
it's
go.
important that someone that can speak their language. Like that's a whole different language.
I
Like
could
you're,
also be a job coach though, or something like that.
but you're part of the team.
Yeah, of course.
Right? Someone who knows what these young men and young ladies are going through, that can be patient. Someone who can conversate with them, someone that can inspire them, someone they can look towards. Yeah, because other than that, you're just gonna give up. Like, I got time for this. I gave you a try. Go ahead, bye.
Yeah, I mean, I hear restaurateurs really wringing their hands over staffing right now, and it seems to me that you can't just sit there and where are all the people? Why don't they come in? You have to make it happen, right? So it seems like Kurt, what do you think?
And when I was in New York at Drive Change, I knew Tom Colicchio before I got the job. I reached out to Tom and said, "Hey, I'm taking over this program. We're teaching youth ages 18 to 25 culinary skills. It's a program in Brooklyn." Tom's like, "Sure," and he came down, checked it out. He sent Maya down. Sent Maya, and then we started the Hospitality for Social Justice program, and that was also a good thing because the Hospitality for Social Justice was bringing crafts management in, knowing how to work with these youth that's been formerly incarcerated. And also, I think me taking the job was also a big deal because it was 2 white chefs that held the position before I did. And I understood them learning wise. So when they came in, we had rap playing. So they was like, "Oh, chef got rap music playing." Then it was like group work. I like, learning, like not the smartest person, but it's like, oh, I learned well by someone teaching me. Or so it was like the way I taught them culinary group setting. So it's like now I'm going to I'm getting 6-7 gift cards. I'm like, whatever group wins $700, $100 group gift card, they are like working, like, like, oh, no, come on, you slowing us up. So, pretty much like group activity work, it was a lot that went into that. But like a lot of my work has been now on the factors of pre-entry, because we talk a lot about re-entry, but I have a lot of, work in a lot of spaces with a lot of organizations with former juvenile lifers. And a lot of times they were like having conversations with them. I did a dinner for a guy named Donnell Drinks. He was juvenile lifer, and he came home. He started an organization actually while he was in prison called Grown. And
Grown?
yes, gaining. I don't even want to
Okay,
butcher.
well, yeah. All right, I'm sorry. I'm tripping you up.
Acronyms
Okay.
I would like butcher,
me too.
but with Donnell and his partner Ike they go into neighborhoods and they talk to youth. They do a lot of food drives. They deal with a lot of employment with individuals that are formerly incarcerated. So when Donnell founded the nonprofit, his friend still was in prison. His friend came out. So Donnell, when we did he said something interesting in his line of questioning. He said, I aged out of crime. He's like, I just woke up at one time. He's like, I didn't know when it was, but I just aged out of like crime. So I wouldn't want nobody to have to be in jail for 27, 20 years to realize they age out of crime. So the entries of catching youth at a certain age, in Philadelphia, you have a high gun violence problem. And from the ages of 22 to about 34, you're most likely to either get shot or do the shooting. And most of these people they will be probably first-time offenders. Mm-hmm. So catching these kids, like I work with a lot of youth, take them on catering jobs, did the Taste of America 2 times with the Bear House, and literally went to New York, took 2 at-risk youth up there. And it was the funniest thing ever because after the event, they went out and they're like on their phones, FaceTiming girls and stuff. And like, I'm a chef, I'm in New York, I'm cooking, I just did this event. And, but those moments and catching people at that phase. And like you said, you became the person you wanted to see. So now you're actually doing that. But like I said, like Roy and Dan, like they're like anybody who's your chef, Dan, he's like a really great chef. And then so is Roy as well. So the fact that these chefs took this time, and I think more chefs need to take the time to take chances on people that's been formerly incarcerated or just at-risk youth, bringing them into your restaurants, giving them some shifts, paying them actually, not just like, hey, come in and do this, but actually pay them, let them know like you can make money doing this.
I think people might have some questions. Is there someone with a microphone?
Thank you so much. I'm a former restaurant owner now. I do counseling in a local community,
Smart getting out of the restaurant.
prison. And I counsel in a prison, recovery, mental health. And first of all, I would say 50% of the people that I work with have worked in hospitality. So my question is twofold. Number one, how do you convince, because I went to a job fair last week and it was filled with hospitality businesses and they all needed help. But yet, when I told them who I was there for, there was always but. So how do you convince someone to take a chance? Number one, in a smaller, it's a small area where I work. And number two, a lot of the people that I work with from their side say, I don't want to go back into restaurants because of the stress, because of the whatever is there, because of the atmosphere. So they want to work, that's all they know, but yet they're also afraid of it. So from both sides.
Yeah, well, good luck. No.
So
I'm sorry.
They could choose a restaurant group that's known for how they treat their staff, number one, right? And I don't think the answer to this is solved on neither one of those sides. As a society, we choose where we spend our money, right? We should spend our money with restaurant groups that share our values. Do we want to spend our money with someone who doesn't want to give somebody an opportunity, right? I was the first one in my family to go to prison. I'm not going to sit up here and say that I understood the problems of mass incarceration or of the Black and brown community, but after living in that environment for 13 years, I know it, and it's real, right? So I didn't have to convince my superiors to invest in these types of people. They did it when they chose to allow me to work for them, right? But I'm hoping that my success will fuel, and your success will fuel others to do what's right. And society can put pressure on businesses to do the right thing, right? All kinds of businesses. It's not just restaurants. We've had conversations with Open Table about supporting this cause, right? It don't just have to be restaurants.
So it sounds like elevating this issue so that supporting the previously incarcerated, both from the restaurant industry, and also just, restaurant industry is working on getting better, you guys. So, maybe your friends won't think it's as horrible.
I think the restaurant
it was.
industry is getting better, but it also has to be changed within. I know in LA, we get a lot of recognition for the way we hire and the team that we have and the success that we're having doing it, to where other restaurants are following that module now. Like, right, they want the attention, or they want the press, or whether it's like it's really meaningful or it's a way to bring up sales. At the end of the day, people are getting chances. And so, and that's all that matter, right? Like, so the culture is changing. The more restaurants get involved, the culture begin to change. And it's just not going to happen overnight.
No, I was just going to say that I think there's always going to be people out there who are going to take a chance. And I think there's going to be the majority of people who, in their mind, they're not going to take a chance. They have too much to worry about. And I think to kind of get to that point, it's this idea of like closing that barrier for people who are hiring. And I think about it a lot, and I think about it. We work in schools, and we have folks who work for us, and we've been training them for years, and they know how to cook. But I always think if they left a school and went to work in a restaurant and try to get a job, someone would be like, "What's your experience?" And like, "I work in a school," and they wouldn't care. So like for me, is there a way? You think of like ServSafe, for example. Like, there's something that doesn't exist in the in the food world of like an actual credential that says I have the basic skill set. And I'm not saying that's foolproof, but I feel like giving employers the confidence at least to say like, okay, this person has some training, they know something, versus just relying on people to take a chance. Because I just feel like, unfortunately, there are a lot of people who won't take a chance. And that's
But
a
what
problem.
happened to the industry where you hired the guy coming through the back door, right? Just was drunk, lost all his money last night.
No questions
No
asked.
questions asked, right? Like, chefs don't want to put in the work no more to train or something, right?
I mean, I've worked in restaurants that
No, I think it's the hard. That's the hard work part. That's,
Yeah,
like
like-
it's a portion that's like hard work where you can bypass a generation and say, yeah, we're gonna start teaching youth culinary. We're gonna start, and it's like, yeah, that's easy. Like, you can talk to, like, when I do something for my son, he's excited because he's cooking. But it's like when you're dealing with a youth that is lost and they're set in a certain way, and you have to stay on them. Like, my check-ins with like a lot of my youth, and I'm like, hey, did you check in with your job today? Because I'll take them on catering jobs, but then I actually had to set them up with day-to-day jobs. And it's like, it's hard work actually, because like, and it's something Chef Eric said on this panel yesterday about mentoring. Sometimes when you're in that situation, you're put in a situation where you have to do, you're pouring so much of yourself in the mentor's position, and you don't get nothing poured back into you. So in a space of where like I said, times where people are taking mental health, a lot of these things into consideration, I just find it funny that the culinary and hospitality industry actually has been more reformed than the prison industry. So like when you said it, so it's like I think it's been a lot more reform in hospitality, how things are going. But like I said, we still have a long way with even like school, and I think even need to start going into local high schools, catching youth early at an earlier point and getting them in, keeping those trades in school. So
Yeah. Okay. Another question. I think we were going here, and then we'll come back to you. It's called group management, question management.
Thank you. So I think maybe like one of the ultimate goals is to have way less, if any, people entering the prison system. And I'm curious how often ideas about abolition are entering your conversations about reform. If y'all feel that reform is a stepping stone to abolishing the American prison system, if there are like ideological pitfalls to the abolition ideology, like how much, I feel like Kurt, you've spoken to this a little bit about like people before they're entering the prison system, but like how often are we talking about like abolition in these spaces? Or
Can you
do y'all-
describe abolition for folks?
Yeah, like the actual abolishment of the American prison system and like having it not exist as it does today. Does that feel like a tangible reality in our future, or are there too many pitfalls to that ideology?
So as by practice, I'm an abolitionist, so I don't believe in the prison system. But
By default, me too.
But what we have right now is not the prison
no.
system.
All I'm saying, I'm just telling you. I'm giving you my beliefs. Now I'm going to tell you, we're in a place where it's not legislatively. Like even when you're talking about when the defund the police movement, right? People hear the word defund, but they don't ever talk about the reinvest in communities. That's the biggest part that no one talks about. So it's like they're saying like since the 1900s, the police department is the only department in this country that has never decreased. But we decrease from schools, we decrease from libraries, social services. So when they're saying defund, it's also a refund, reinvest in your community. But I just think that the point of the climate that we're in, maybe not in our lifetime, but it probably could happen.
Keith, anybody else want to take that on?
For me, I'm California. Prisons are big businesses. They're privately owned. Like this is how people are making their millions of dollars. Until we remove it from privately owned and people literally making money off of it, like people are not going to lose interest in it.
One quick thing. Privately prisons are like your local prison, your state prison makes more money off of people being locked up than actual private prisons. So private prisons, they're like a small, they're like a tick on the dog. So like the dog is like the prison system, but your local state prison makes more money off of people being incarcerated than the actual prison system. I mean, private prisons. So
Unicor Industries.
Yeah.
Yes. So the prison system we have today is not how it was designed, right? It was designed to rehabilitate and to deter people from committing crimes. So I think there's a balance that needs to take place where, yes, some crimes, I sold drugs. I should have went to prison, all right? 20 years, 30 years? Hell no, right? Just locking people up and forgetting about them, that's not the answer, right? Now, if you lock them up and Dan had a 5-year program where they learned everything there was to know about culinary and they came out and could get a sous chef job, now how productive would that be, right? We locked them up. We told them they can't get Pell Grants, so you can't go to school. I was going to school through Ohio University College Program for the Incarcerated, and I would sit in the common area. And I would see these young kids, because I'm old now, but I was an old man then too. But I would see these young kids come by, and I saw it in their eyes. Like, what are you doing? Like, I want to do that too. Like, I'm tired of this. I want different. I want more. How do I do that, right? We need to figure out how the prison systems become what they were designed to do. And if we can't, then we need to vote everybody out of office, because Laura Bush was the primary owner of Keefe Industries, which sells all the commissary to all the prisons.
Yes.
So if that's not a conflict of interest, you tell me what is.
But then, P. Wilson was the concrete guy that built all the prisons in California. I mean, all of the 90 prisons in California. But the thing is, prisons have a lot of contracts. So then it goes back to the 13th Amendment, right? Or the legalized slavery. You feel me?
I worked for 13 cents an hour for
I worked
years.
I worked for 9. But they have contracts with like Victoria's Secret, license plates, glasses, right? It's big business.
I
Right.
paid the bills for Unicor Industries at Federal Prison Camp Butner. I was Unicor Industries accounts payable clerk, the highest paid inmate on the compound. I made $26 a month, and I saw the amount of money that they were making.
Yeah, but they can hire. It's funny that the inmates in prison can work on your product due to a contract, but can't come home and get a job at your company.
Yeah, that's it, right? That's it, exactly. Okay. Chip, did you have a question?
Yeah, first,
back
oops, is this working? I don't think, is this working? Yeah, okay, great. Great topic, thank you very much. I'm just curious about how do we elevate the conversation on a national level so that we can drive more incarcerated people into the workplace, right? I think our industry has a rich history of helping changing society. And I think about the work that Share Our Strength, No Kid Hungry has done over the past 30 years. And they've had a strong, it's a nonprofit, but clearly strong ties within the restaurant industry.
Yeah, I work with No Kid Home.
Right? And so this issue of staffing has been an issue that has plagued our industry for the better part of 40 years. And it appears as if we have a solution in front of us. And so my question is, like, how do we elevate this conversation and change the narrative so that we can have more groups beyond just Tom's group and others that are involved? So that's my question. I'm also intrigued about the state of Maine, but I don't think we have time to really unpack that.
Everybody's intrigued about the state of Maine, so we'll have to talk about that later. But how do we elevate the national conversation? That's your question, right?
Continue to talk about it. You know, continue to talk about it, write about it. If you're a reporter, write about it. If you're an activist, talk about it. Bring people in, give people opportunities. And when there's more people like him and I up here who are being successful, that will show, you know.
It will fight the argument. It will
And inmates come home, and just by nature, they're very, show me. You know, show me. I'm tired of hearing it, show me. I was in Men's Warehouse buying a suit, and this young kid helped me. And before I said, "What's your name?" He's like, "Why do you want to know my name?" I said, "Well, I'm going to tell the cashier that you helped me, so you get your commission." He said, "I don't get commissions." I said, "Get your GM out here." I said, "How do you think this guy's going to sell something for you? You don't even want to pay him no commissions." So the kid says, "Well, where do you work?" I said, "I'm a restaurant manager." He's like, "You hire people with criminal histories?" I said, "Why are you volunteering that information?" Right? He said. I said, "How much do you make?" He said, $17 an hour. Well, $17 an hour, you can't even eat in New York City, right? So he says, "Well, how much do your guys make?" I said, "I don't know. Back waiters might make $1,000 a week." He's like, "You're bullshitting." I said, "No, I'm not." So here's my card. Call me if you want. He called me a week later. About 3 weeks ago, he made his first $1,000 a week. He gave me a text. He's like, "GOAT, G-O-A-T." I'm like,
What do you think, Dan? What do you guys think? Just on elevating the national conversation.
I mean, back to Keith's point he made earlier, what happened to the days where like someone can just get a job? Like I haven't worked in many restaurants that I can remember where I started there and I was expected, like the expectation that I wasn't ready to just do the job. Like I don't remember walking, like every restaurant we were hiring, all I hear from chefs is like, "Man, I can't find good people." Like everybody just wants to find a chef that's like ready to go, like ready to go. That's what I mean. So like in terms of like raising the conversation, like I would hate to think this group in this room or this conference feels the need that the conversation needs to be raised from the outside for them to prioritize it. Like if I'm a restaurant owner, you just start hiring people who were previously incarcerated.
Just do the work,
train them.
right?
Like,
Do the work.
Like it's kind of sad to think that it needs to be something that's written about. And honestly, it probably won't be. Because like, let's be honest, like the stories that are written about food are usually not about this
Hold
kind
on.
of stuff.
They'll write about it. But I think when we talk about nationally, it's hard to do when you break down different sections. Like you can't talk about stuff the same thing in Louisiana the way I could talk about it in Pennsylvania. It's just different. Like when you break everything down, like New Orleans actually still has like their oldest prison came from convict leasing. So that's still here. Like that's still here. Yeah. So when I started the EMI dinners, it was about conversation. It was using my talents as a chef, using food as a vehicle to bring people together, and we can talk about mass incarceration. And I felt as though that was my way because it was like, oh, I cook, but I know a little bit about mass incarceration. Then I started, doing a lot more research, educating myself more. now I'm a organizer. I don't like to call it activist, but we do organizing because we do like continuously planning work on political elections, making sure we elect the right people in office that's going to go along with the agendas that we would like to see. So
Do you think your mass incarceration dinners could be replicated by other folks around the
I think
country?
anybody could have an EMI dinner.
So y'all
You
could all have
You
EMI
could just have a
dinners.
dinner. You could just have a dinner and talk to people about mass incarceration. Most importantly, your city council, because a lot of times your city council is a collective of people, and usually they can pass bills together. So even if like on our city council, the magic number is 9. So I have like 9 friends on city council. So I'm always constantly talking about them, and I even help us with like in Philly, we just passed emergency paid sick leave bill through the COVID. I was one of the authors on the bill with it, because it was like, oh, you're a chef, you know about the restaurant industry. It was a lot of people saying, this bill will affect Black and brown owners, and I was like, give me a Black restaurant that has over 25 employees, and I'll tell you. And nobody could so I was like, yeah, so they're lying. Drop the number. So, but like I said, I think just having the conversations is usually the hard part, and especially the hard part if you're in like a Louisiana or like a Texas, or you're not as a state that's so California, y'all could do a million, and you guys do a lot of that work anyway. I think most of the Homeboy Industries is out there. I don't know if you guys have heard of that, but Homeboy Industries has been the most impactful thing on my journey as a chef, seeing how, and he wasn't even a chef. He's like a preacher and literally pastor, and he's literally changing it's the intention is always good, but his intention is great, but his impact is huge. It's really huge impact.
We have just 5 minutes. I'm going to get a couple more quick questions, and we'll go here, and there was this guy in the back. I cannot ignore him. So just real quick, I think we can get through these last 3. Go ahead.
I learned my lesson to wait for the mic. Hi, my name's Jessie. This was minorly touched on in one of the previous questions. If I don't write it down, I don't remember it. Do you see within the improvement of the food aspect within these institutions as the first domino in a domino effect to overall improve them before any more change can be made?
What are you saying? Does the food itself in the institution have to change before other change can happen?
Do you think it's a good way to have a first step?
Yeah, go ahead. We'll just take one of you, and then
So
we'll go on.
if you're locked up in prison and you're getting served food marked not for human consumption, how good are you going to feel about yourself? How much motivation are you going to have to change the way you think or the decisions you make, right? You're told you're worth nothing. You're treated like you're worth nothing. You're fed like you're worth nothing. Half the time you come home and you think you are nothing, right? Food is the most basic necessity that everybody's entitled to, and we spend $85 billion a year in the federal prison system. Maybe a little less correction officer overtime and a little better food in the chow hall.
So I guess that's the answer, yes. Okay. There was someone here, and then you're going to be our last question back there, okay? So, okay, was there someone else in here who has? Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Thank you. You gentlemen have done a fine job of pushing forward the fact that we all could do a better job of supporting this ideal of hiring people that have been formerly incarcerated. My question is, as a guy who grew up in the inner city and understands a little bit about the innate skill of cutting through the bullshit, how do you manage when you have 50% of your staff that's formerly incarcerated, the other 50% of the staff that does not understand the language? So you have a manager that can approach someone very directly, and the person that is being approached is not offended. It's everyone else that's listening.
I guess that's for me. Well, yeah, like he said, those conversations are not for everybody, right? But like I say, I'm in the restaurant 14 to 16 hours. I'm the first one in, the last one to go. I meet with each manager one-on-one, and then whenever there is a conflict or a problem with the staff, at this time, I'll lead the conversation. So it's constantly training on both parts. I'm very involved because I speak the language of the hiree that's come from the inner city, right? I know when you're calling off for work, talking about you're sick. So when you call me and you're talking about, I ain't feeling good, I'll give you a bunch of shit right then. Right? Yeah, I mean, I can't force you to come in, but I give you a bunch of shit right then, excuse me. Right? When you're talking back, I didn't come up in this yes chef culture, so I don't expect that. But I do expect when I'm giving you a director or a narrative to follow my lead. Like, I am the senior here. And you get a lot of talk back, right? And I just have that street conversation. I take them back to what they know. You know what I mean? Like, you're not going to talk crazy to the guy running the block if you're not running it. You know?
What
And
about the people who haven't been incarcerated? Do you have some of those on your staff?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And how do they, if they are like, how do you get them to come around to the program?
We have the conversations together, right? So I show them an approach. But a lot of the staff that haven't been formally incarcerated are from the block, though, right?
Yeah.
Like they're
Yeah.
from the block.
So they know.
They know the BS
right.
too.
Yeah, and another thing about that though, but like hierarchy. So sometimes it's a power dynamic structure that the fact that you said you're there, you're accessible. So sometimes when you're in restaurants and kitchens, kitchen culture is based off hierarchy. Like you
Like
just
street
can't.
culture.
You just like you said, but it's also like we didn't grow up in yes chef culture.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's like, yes chef, you got to go directly. I can't talk to the chef. I got to talk to the sous chef. Like I got a lot of homies that like been through that life where it's like, oh, you can't talk to the chef. You got to talk to this. But when you're there, you diminish the power dynamic, the distance to power. So now they're like, oh man, I could just talk to chef. So when it's that kind of culture, when you have that culture, and Eric, I believe you're the same exact way. If they can't come to you, they can come to DeMar. Like you guys are present, and it's not of like that you're unreachable. So when it's that, they may have to deal with the person that's going to get them to BS, and they like, oh, they'll just call out because then they're going to treat them with they don't have the culture. So they're going to treat them with the energy of like, you a square, and it's like, I'm just not coming in. But then it's like, yeah, chef, this is, or they may hit you with the like, yeah, I can't come in, but you're going to already.
Call in the moment.
Exactly.
All right.
So.
Let's get this last question from the very patient gentleman in the back. All right.
Hola, and thank you guys.
No pressure. Last
so
question.
Much. All good. I'm gonna bring it home. So this question is for mainly Dan. I've been following your business model for a little while, and it's amazing. So please don't stop. Like, don't stop. But when I saw it, I kind of noticed that, or I'm guessing the assumption is that you get pushback. America loves prisons, right? And probably mainly for the money aspect of it. So if you're introducing something that maybe costs a little bit more, how are you dealing with like attacking that, if that assumption is right?
Yeah, so I assume you mean like the idea of like placing a chef and that costs more money and
Correct.
Yeah.
Or the food,
sure, and the food, anything.
practices, whatever, whatever costs more.
I think the key to it is just making a practical case out of it. You know, for example, like I guess I've come to the point now where if something costs more money, you're not going to get people to buy into it just because it's better for us in this room. Because we let's put it this way. Making food better for kids in public schools is a topic that not everybody even believes in. You know, there's people who are like, I don't think we should spend money to make food better for kids in schools. I've heard this many times. So this is even a much more polarizing topic, the idea that this would cost more money. So I think you have to find practical arguments as to why this makes more sense. If we're going to spend more money on this, how are we saving money somewhere else? Is there a model that exists where we can this can be cost effective? And I think that's the only way it works, because I don't think you can convince people on emotion. There's a reason things are the way they are. Like there's a reason things are not. Food is not prioritized in institutions because that's not their main function. It's not prioritized in schools. It's not prioritized by any means in prisons, and there's a reason for that.
I can help you with that answer too, right?
Okay, real quick, we got to wrap up.
$40,000 a year to incarcerate somebody. 77% recidivism rate. If you lower that by 5%, you could pay 10 chefs to be in every single prison, right? Then you're going to reduce the probation officers, the halfway houses, and it's going to be a domino effect. That $80,000 chef, you know what? Let's give him $125,000. We'll pay back 10 times the money in 1 year.
All right, boom. Listen, thank you.
There you go.